She thought she was dating the perfect man, charming, calm, and successful. But one rainy night, a hidden room inside his house exposed a terrifying secret. What Vanessa discovered would connect her boyfriend to multiple disappearances, and suddenly, escaping him became a fight for survival. The rain had been falling over the quiet town of Ashbury, Oregon for nearly 3 days, when Vanessa Cole first realized something about her boyfriend did not make sense. The streets were wet and empty, the small cafes near downtown closed early because of the storm, and the entire town carried the heavy silence that often comes before terrible news spreads. Vanessa sat alone inside her apartment, staring at the glowing screen of her phone while waiting for Derek Hale to answer her messages. He had been distant for weeks. Some days he disappeared for hours without explanation. Other times he returned unexpectedly affectionate, buying flowers, expensive dinners, and speaking about a future together, as if nothing had changed. Vanessa tried convincing herself that his strange behavior came from stress. Derek worked long overnight shifts in private security, and he often claimed his schedule exhausted him. But deep inside, she knew something darker was happening. She simply did not know how close danger truly was. Vanessa had met Derek almost a year earlier, at a charity event near Portland. He was charming, calm, and unusually attentive. Unlike the loud men she had dated in the past, Derek spoke softly and listened carefully. He remembered small details about her life. He learned her favorite coffee order after hearing it only once. He surprised her with books from authors she loved. Friends told Vanessa she had finally found someone mature and dependable. Derek appeared successful, disciplined, and emotionally controlled. He rented a modern townhouse outside the city and drove a clean black SUV that always smelled faintly of cedar cologne and leather. Nothing about him suggested violence or instability. In fact, Derek seemed almost too perfect. Over time, however, Vanessa began noticing tiny inconsistencies that slowly disturbed her. Derek avoided talking about his childhood. Whenever she asked about old friends or family, he redirected the conversation. He never allowed her to visit his workplace. He also kept a locked storage room inside his townhouse and became visibly irritated whenever she walked near it. At first Vanessa laughed it off, assuming everyone deserved privacy. But one evening she accidentally noticed scratches on his forearm that looked recent and deep. Derek quickly covered them with his sleeve and claimed he had injured himself while repairing fencing at work. Vanessa wanted to believe him, yet his eyes carried a strange coldness she had never seen before. Days later, the town of Ashbury was shaken by the disappearance of a young woman named Emily Carter. Emily was a 24-year-old graduate student who vanished after leaving a bookstore near the riverfront district. Local residents organized volunteer searches, while news stations repeated her photograph hourly. Vanessa watched the coverage from her apartment, while Derek stood silently behind her with crossed arms. His expression never changed. While most people in town reacted with concern or sadness, Derek only muttered that disappearances happened everywhere, and police would probably find her eventually. The comment unsettled Vanessa. There was no emotion in his voice. No sympathy. Just irritation that the story interrupted his evening. That same night Vanessa noticed something even stranger. Derek received a phone call around midnight, and abruptly stepped outside during the storm to take it privately. Through the apartment window, Vanessa could barely see him standing near the parking lot beneath flickering lights. His posture was tense. At one point he glanced back toward her apartment, as though making sure she was not listening. When he returned, His clothes were soaked and mud stained the bottom of his boots. Derek immediately placed the boots near the door, and went straight to wash his hands. Vanessa tried asking who had called him, but he calmly replied it was only work-related business. Then he changed the subject and suggested they watch a movie together. The normal tone of his voice somehow made the moment even more unsettling. Over the following week, police intensified their search for Emily Carter. Volunteers discovered abandoned personal belongings near a wooded highway several miles outside town. News reporters described investigators examining tire tracks found close to the area. Vanessa listened carefully while preparing dinner one evening, but her attention froze when she noticed Derek suddenly stop eating. His fork remained suspended in the air for several seconds. His face turned pale before he forced a weak smile and continued chewing as though nothing happened. Vanessa's heartbeat quickened. She remembered the mud-covered boots. She remembered his midnight phone call. She remembered the scratches on his arm. That night, unable to sleep, Vanessa quietly walked through Derek's townhouse while he showered upstairs. She did not know exactly what she was searching for. Maybe reassurance. Maybe proof that her fears were irrational. But as she passed near the locked storage room, she noticed the door was slightly open for the first time. A cold feeling moved through her chest. Slowly, she pushed the door wider. Inside the dim room stood shelves packed with sealed plastic containers, old tools, and camping equipment. Nothing immediately looked alarming until Vanessa noticed a silver bracelet hanging from the corner of a workbench. Her breath caught instantly. Earlier that day, the local news had shown a close-up photo of Emily Carter wearing an identical bracelet in one of her missing person pictures. Vanessa stepped closer, trembling. Beside the bracelet lay a folded yellow raincoat stained with dark brown marks that looked disturbingly old. Nearby sat a small leather purse partially hidden beneath a top. Footsteps suddenly creaked above her. Vanessa froze. The shower had stopped. For a brief second the entire house became silent except for the sound of rain tapping against the windows. Then she heard Derek slowly walking down the staircase. Each step felt heavier than the last. Panic flooded through her body as she stared around the room searching for somewhere to hide, but there was nowhere to go. The hallway outside was narrow, and Derek was already approaching. Then his voice calmly echoed from the darkness beyond the door. "Vanessa," he said softly. "What are you doing in there?" Vanessa's hands began shaking so badly that she nearly dropped the silver bracelet onto the concrete floor. The tiny piece of jewelry suddenly felt heavier than stone in her fingers. Outside, thunder rolled across Ashbury as rain slammed against the windows of the townhouse, creating a low constant roar that somehow made the silence inside even more terrifying. Derek's footsteps stopped just outside the storage room door. For several long seconds he said nothing else. Vanessa could feel her heartbeat pounding against her ribs so violently it almost hurt. Every instinct told her to run, but fear locked her body in place. Trying desperately to sound calm, Vanessa slowly placed the bracelet back onto the workbench and stepped away from the shelves. "I was looking for a flashlight," she answered carefully. "The power keeps flickering." Her voice cracked near the end of the sentence. Derek appeared in the doorway wearing dark jeans and a gray sweatshirt, his damp hair pushed back from his forehead. Water still glistened along his neck from the shower. At first his expression looked neutral, almost relaxed, but Vanessa immediately noticed his eyes move past her shoulder toward the workbench. His gaze landed on the bracelet for the briefest moment before returning to her face. The change in atmosphere inside the room was instant. Almost an entire minute passed before his footsteps finally retreated down the hallway. Vanessa did not sleep at all that night. The next morning Derek behaved affectionate again, almost excessively so. He brought Vanessa coffee in bed, kissed her forehead, and suggested they spend the weekend together outside town. He even mentioned renting a remote cabin near the mountains, where they could disconnect from everything. The suggestion terrified Vanessa. Every survival instinct inside her screamed that leaving town alone with him would be a catastrophic mistake. She quickly lied about needing to help a co-worker during the weekend. Derek stared at her for several seconds before smiling again, though disappointment flickered briefly across his face. After he left for work, Vanessa immediately drove to a small diner across town and contacted her closest friend, Rachel Mercer. Rachel had known Vanessa for years and immediately sensed something was terribly wrong from the sound of her voice alone. Sitting in a corner booth beside fogged windows, Vanessa explained everything in rushed whispers: the storage room, the bracelet, Derek's strange behavior, the missing woman. Rachel listened silently, growing paler with every detail. "You need to go to police," Rachel finally said. Vanessa hesitated. "What if I'm wrong?" Rachel leaned forward across the table. "And what if you're right?" The question lingered heavily between them. Before Vanessa could respond, her phone suddenly vibrated across the table. A message from Derek appeared on the screen. "I forgot my watch this morning. I'm heading back home for a minute." Vanessa's blood ran cold instantly. Because she suddenly remembered one terrifying detail. In her panic the night before, she had accidentally left the storage room door slightly open. Vanessa stared at the message on her phone, as if the words themselves might change if she looked long enough. Her breathing became shallow and uneven. Across the diner table, Rachel immediately noticed the fear-draining color from Vanessa's face. The storm outside had finally weakened, but gray clouds still hung over Ashbury, covering the town in a cold dim light that made everything feel lifeless. Vanessa slowly lowered the phone onto the table and whispered what Derek had written. Rachel's expression tightened instantly. "He's going to know someone was in that room," Rachel said quietly. Vanessa's mind raced through every detail from the previous night. She remembered stepping away from the shelves too quickly. She remembered the workbench drawer remaining slightly open. Most of all, she remembered the storage room door not fully closing behind her. At the time, she had been too frightened to notice. Now the mistake felt catastrophic. Derek was observant. Extremely observant. He noticed tiny changes most people ignored. If he realized she had searched the room, then everything between them would change immediately. Rachel urged Vanessa to stay at the diner and call authorities right away, but Vanessa's fear complicated every decision. She kept imagining police dismissing her concerns because she lacked direct evidence. A bracelet alone would not prove anything. Derek was intelligent and careful. If he sensed suspicion, he could easily destroy whatever evidence remained before investigators ever arrived. Worse still, Vanessa feared what he might do if he believed she intended to expose him. Meanwhile, nearly 20 minutes passed with no further message from Derek. That silence frightened Vanessa more than anger would have. Finally, her phone vibrated again. This time the message was short. "We need to talk tonight." Vanessa's stomach tightened painfully. There was no smile in the text. No friendly comment. No heart emoji like he usually added. Just 5 cold words. Rachel immediately offered to let Vanessa stay at her apartment, but Vanessa hesitated again. Part of her still struggled to accept that Derek could truly be capable of violence. Human minds often resist terrifying truths even when evidence stands directly in front of them. Vanessa remembered the man who brought her flowers after difficult workdays, the man who held her hand during long drives through Oregon forests, the man who spoke softly about building a future together. Yet now those memories felt distorted, almost artificial, as though she had fallen in love with a performance rather than a real person. Unable to concentrate, Vanessa returned home later that afternoon accompanied by Rachel. They hoped Derek would still be at work, and initially the townhouse appeared empty. The black SUV was gone from the driveway. The curtains remained closed. Everything looked normal. But the moment Vanessa stepped inside, she sensed something had changed. The house was too clean. The sharp smell of chemical cleaners filled the air so strongly it burned her nose. Kitchen counters gleamed unnaturally. The living room carpet looked freshly scrubbed. Even the trash bins were missing. Panic rose in Vanessa's chest as she hurried toward the hallway leading to the storage room. The door stood wide open. Inside, the shelves had been rearranged completely. The bracelet was gone. The raincoat had disappeared. Every container looked organized with unnatural precision, as though someone had spent hours carefully removing all signs of disorder. Vanessa felt dizzy. Derek knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Rachel quickly grabbed Vanessa's arm and whispered that they needed to leave immediately. But before they could move, Vanessa noticed something sitting alone on the workbench. A single photograph. With trembling hands, she picked it up. The picture showed Vanessa herself walking out of her office building 3 nights earlier. The image had clearly been taken from a distance without her knowledge. On the back of the photograph, written in neat black ink, were 4 chilling words. "You should trust me." Rachel's face turned pale the moment she read it. Fear now became certainty. This was no misunderstanding. Derek had been watching her. Possibly for far longer than she realized. Rachel insisted they leave immediately and contact authorities, and this time Vanessa finally agreed. The 2 women hurried outside and drove straight toward the Ashbury Police Department across town. During the drive, Vanessa could barely think clearly. Every memory involving Derek now carried new horrifying meaning. His habit of asking detailed questions about her schedule. The unexpected appearances near her workplace. The way he always seemed to know where she had been even without asking. What once felt like affection now looked disturbingly like surveillance. When they arrived at the station, Detective Lena Torres met them inside a quiet interview room. Torres was a seasoned investigator known throughout the county for remaining calm under pressure. Vanessa spent nearly an hour explaining everything from the beginning: Derek's secretive behavior, the locked storage room, the bracelet matching Emily Carter's photograph, and the threatening picture left on the workbench. Detective Torres listened carefully without interrupting, occasionally writing notes, while another officer quietly recorded the interview. As Vanessa finished speaking, Torres leaned back thoughtfully. "You did the right thing coming here," she said. Then her expression grew more serious. "Because there's something you need to know." Vanessa's chest tightened. Detective Torres opened a folder on the table and slid several photographs forward. Each showed different missing women from nearby counties over the past 4 years. Some cases had received media attention. Others barely made local news before fading from public memory. Vanessa stared silently at the faces while dread slowly crawled through her body. Then Detective Torres pointed toward one photograph near the center. The woman was smiling beside a lake during summer. Around her wrist hung a silver bracelet identical to Emily Carter's, and identical to the one Vanessa had found in Derek's storage room. Torres spoke carefully. "We believe these disappearances may be connected," she said quietly. "But until now, we've never had anyone place a possible suspect near physical evidence." Vanessa felt the room spinning around her. Because in that moment she finally understood the horrifying truth. Emily Carter may not have been Derek's first victim. And if Vanessa had remained silent any longer, she might have become the next one.